Have you ever wondered what it takes to change the course of history? The Bible tells us of 3 extraordinary men who did just that: Joseph, Moses, and David. Their journeys from humble beginnings to legendary leadership continue to inspire millions today. Let's begin with Joseph, the dreamer who wore a coat of many colors. As his father's favorite son, Joseph's brothers burned with jealousy. They sold him into slavery in Egypt, telling their father he had been killed by wild animals. But God had greater plans for Joseph than anyone could imagine. In Egypt, Joseph's integrity and wisdom caught the attention of Pharaoh himself. Through divine inspiration, Joseph interpreted Pharaoh's dreams, predicting 7 years of abundance followed by 7 years of famine. Pharaoh was so impressed that he made Joseph second in command over all Egypt. The same brothers who betrayed him would later bow before him, seeking food during the famine. Instead of revenge, Joseph chose forgiveness, saying, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good." Generations later, the Israelites had become slaves in Egypt. Enter Moses, a Hebrew baby who should have been killed but was rescued by Pharaoh's daughter. Raised as an Egyptian prince, Moses never forgot his true heritage. After fleeing Egypt for killing an abusive slave master, he encountered God in a burning bush that wasn't consumed by flames. God commanded Moses to lead his people out of slavery. Despite his initial reluctance and speech impediment, Moses confronted Pharaoh with the famous words, "Let my people go." Through 10 devastating plagues and the miraculous parting of the Red Sea, Moses led over 2 million Israelites to freedom. He received the 10 Commandments on Mount Sinai and guided God's people through the wilderness for 40 years. Our third hero, David, emerged centuries later when Israel needed a king after God's own heart. As the youngest of 8 brothers, David spent his youth tending sheep. But God saw something special in this shepherd boy. While others cowered, young David faced the giant Goliath with just a sling and 5 smooth stones, declaring, "You come against me with sword and spear, but I come against you in the name of the Lord." David's victory over Goliath was just the beginning. He became Israel's greatest king, expanding the kingdom and establishing Jerusalem as its capital. Though he made serious mistakes, including his affair with Bathsheba, David's genuine repentance and poetic psalms reveal a man deeply devoted to God. These 3 stories share remarkable parallels. Each man faced seemingly impossible obstacles. Joseph was betrayed and imprisoned. Moses confronted the world's most powerful empire, and David faced both literal and figurative giants. Yet they all discovered that with God, nothing is impossible. Each hero also experienced profound personal transformation. Joseph learned to see God's purpose in his suffering. Moses transformed from a stuttering shepherd into a confident leader. David grew from a humble shepherd into a warrior king who united a nation. Their stories teach us about waiting on God's timing. Joseph spent years in prison before his rise to power. Moses lived as a shepherd for 40 years before God called him. David was anointed as king, but had to wait many years while being pursued by King Saul before taking the throne. These men weren't perfect. Moses struggled with anger. David committed adultery and murder. And Joseph's youthful arrogance contributed to his brothers' hatred. Yet God used them powerfully, showing that he can work through imperfect people who trust in him. Their influence extends far beyond their own time. Joseph's leadership saved countless lives during the famine and preserved the Hebrew people. Moses not only freed the Israelites, but gave them God's law, shaping their identity for generations. David established a dynasty that would ultimately lead to Jesus Christ, and his psalms continue to inspire worship today. These stories remind us that God often chooses unlikely candidates for extraordinary missions. A slave became a prime minister. A fugitive became a liberator. A shepherd became a king. Each man's story demonstrates how God can turn adversity into advantage, weakness into strength, and defeat into victory. The legacy of Joseph, Moses, and David continues to resonate because their struggles mirror our own. We too face betrayal, self-doubt, and seemingly impossible challenges. Their stories assure us that God remains faithful, working behind the scenes even when we can't see His hand. Through their examples, we learn that greatness often begins in obscurity, that character is developed through trials, and that God's plans unfold in His perfect timing. Their journeys from ordinary beginnings to extraordinary endings remind us that with faith, perseverance, and trust in God, we too can overcome any obstacle and fulfill our divine purpose.